Wishwa, it's an online platform for social champions, for change makers, everyday change makers that we see around us, who have put decades of work, of their lifetime, their earnings, into making a difference, to serve others, and to make our world into a better place.
Good morning and welcome to WishwaTalks. My name is Trishant. Thank you all for attending today's event. For those of you who have attended a WishwaTalk before, a warm welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, here's a little bit about us. WishwaTalks is a space to expand the horizons of your mind. Every webinar, we call experts from different domains to discuss opinions, problems, issues, and perspectives. Each webinar is an interactive session where we all walk away with more respect for each other and a deeper understanding of the topic at hand. If you miss a session, please visit our website or YouTube channel for a full library of past WishwaTalk videos on many interesting different topics. Today on WishwaTalks, our speaker is Utkarsh Upadhyay from WaterAid India, and he will lead us through the session in just a few moments. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our distinguished keynote speaker for today. With a wealth of experience as the State Technical Specialist at WaterAid India, Utkarsh has made significant contributions to the field of sustainable infrastructure and climate adaptation. His expertise as a hydrogeologist and planning researcher has led him to excel in areas such as watershed management, stormwater management, hydrogeology, and environmental impact assessment. His profound knowledge in groundwater modeling, rainwater harvesting, and various other areas make him an invaluable resource in the realm of water management. Let us warmly welcome Utkarsh Upadhyay as he shares his insights and expertise on crucial aspects of enhancing climate resilience through participatory groundwater management. Before we get started, I would like to inform our audience that our speaker will be taking questions from you after our main talk. So please leave your questions in the chat or use the raise hand tool, and we will allow you to ask your questions in person. I request everyone to turn on your webcams while interacting with the speaker. Now, without further ado, I invite our speaker to begin today's WishwaTalk. A very good morning, sir. Namaste.
Hi, Tushant. Hello,
Hi.
everyone. A very good morning. So as Tushant just told that, but I think he exaggerated a little much. I don't have a vast experience, but I have been working in and around water for about 8 years or so. So my career sort of started from Jharkhand. I have worked a lot in Jharkhand, and recently I have been working in Telangana around water with WaterAid India as in the capacity of state technical specialist for about 2 years now. So I'll just project my screen for the presentation and we can get ahead with it. Is this visible, Tushant?
Yes.
So yeah, today I'll be talking about my experience with groundwater management, and a little about the impact of groundwater withdrawal, depletion, and other things on climate change, and how bringing communities together can help in adaptation towards climate change. So before moving on, I would like to just give a brief about WaterAid, the organization I work in. So WaterAid is an international non-for-profit organization, and so it is a fraternity of multiple countries with as WaterAid. And in 2016, we started our own entity in the name of Jal Seva Charitable Foundation under Section 25 of the Companies Act. So WaterAid works in around 13 states. Now I think it has moved to this 21 slide. So I think we are now working in 15 states and more than 70 districts in urban as well as rural setup. So WaterAid works on the four key aspects of drinking water, wash in institutions, sanitation and hygiene, which is the larger wash sector. So I would like to connect over here how WaterAid and the work on groundwater management is related to WaterAid, how we are working in WaterAid. The first thing is when we are providing drinking water, we have to talk about sustainability of the sources from which we are tapping the water. May it be surface water resources as rivers, lakes, or ponds. Certain dams are there on these rivers and streams where your drinking water supply comes from. And the second is the groundwater resource. So and about 65 to 70% of our domestic water supply, the drinking water supply, comes from the groundwater resources, all in India. So before going into the things about the managed aquifer recharge, going into aquifer and participating groundwater management, let us understand groundwater in the context of India. So we keep on hearing that India came from the Indus Valley civilization. But if you go back in history, uh, with the River Valley civilization, with the Indus Valley civilization, groundwater, India is also a groundwater civilization, which is very much evident from the step wells and other things which you see in Rajasthan or the states of Rajasthan and Gujarat, where you see the issue of water was prevalent from thousands of years ago, and people and the kings over there have built multiple step wells and other things. So we can see that the river valley civilization and groundwater civilization were hand in hand in the context of India. So when we talk about the 19th century, we were using groundwater just by our own hands and all. So we had open wells, we had some step wells, we were getting down in the step wells, we were getting water from those step wells, we were using pulley, we were using bullock carts, we were using the erstwhile Persian wheels, which we can't see right now. And those were the source of withdrawing groundwater in the early 19th centuries and late 19th centuries. And then when we move into the 20th century, around 1965, 1970, when the green revolution started, we can see that the introduction of borewell and hand pumps started for production of much for the food production, for the increase in food production. And when we move into 1990s sort of thing, then the introduction of electrical and submersible pumps came in, which led us to dig even deeper, where we can withdraw water not through just the hand pumps, but with the deeper bore wells. And when we had water, then because we could get water at any in an arid zone or any location, because as well, if you go, the urbanization or the civilization were based near a river or near a surface water body. But because now we can get groundwater through deeper bore wells anywhere, the urbanization started, the real urbanization started in late 1990s and early 2000. Now the condition is that India is the largest user of groundwater. The 25% of the overall groundwater withdrawal in the world comes just from India. And we now have 40 million tube wells or bore wells which we are using. So you can see how the condition has worsened because of the introduction of bore wells just for the food production. And now the condition is that we not only produce we are not only the producer of largest food grains in the world, we are also the largest exporter of food grains. So we have surpassed our need, and now we have started exporting at the extent of the larger groundwater withdrawal. And you can see from the schematic that how initially we were relying on hand pumps, then just the open wells, the dug wells, and then hand pumps and the deeper bore wells, and how is it declining the groundwater. So the other thing I'll talk about is occurrence of groundwater. So when we talk about groundwater, It is not like a river underground. Groundwater occurs in the rock formation, in the soil, in their fractures and all. And so how groundwater reaches over there, it is same through, there is only one source of water in this world which is prominent, which is the rainfall. The rain falls on the ground, and millions of years ago, when there was no concretization, and maybe 150 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, when there was no concretization, there was a lot of natural recharge. And though the water gets percolated and trapped into these aquifers or these rock formations, soil formations, which we talk about. Now the condition is that the natural recharge is inhibited by the urbanization, by the concretization, and the extraction is much more than the natural and artificial recharge combined. And this has led to what we read in our newspapers and multiple web articles, that certain cities are going into day zero, or the water is declining. That there was a report from Niti Aayog, if I remember correctly, that 21 cities are almost reached day zero. So all these are results of that the extraction has surpassed the natural recharge, and the groundwater reserve is declining slowly and slowly. So, so the other thing is, I would like to talk about the rainfall in variability, and we think that that rainfall falls similarly over a geographical. If we talk about a geographical overlay, but I would like to show you a small video which was developed by Aquadem. This is an organization based out of Pune, who works intensively on aquifer management and participatory groundwater management. This is animation of Pune city, where you can see the invariability of rainfall in a short geographical land. So you can see that this is a graph on the right hand side, where you can see that, the rainfall from 5 mm to 30 mm per day. And you can see within a city how much is the rainfall variability. So the second thing I would like to talk about are surface water and groundwater interactions, because source of both the surface water and groundwater is rainfall. They are very much interrelated. So when we talk about the quantity of surface water and groundwater, the interrelation is pretty much understood by everyone, that both the things happen. The particular streams are both gaining and losing streams. So some streams gain water from the groundwater. Some streams lose water, and the water from the streams get infiltrated into the shallow aquifers. And some streams behave in both the manners at different levels and different points of those streams. When it comes about the quality of water, uh, when a groundwater is seeping, when the base flow from the groundwater is going to a stream or a surface water body, and that base flow meets a sewage system or something, then the quality of the surface water gets depleted. Similarly, when municipal waste and other waste are dumped into the body, and those leaches down to the groundwater, the quality of groundwater diminishes. So both in terms of quantity and quality, surface water and groundwater are very much related. The next thing is over pumping. So we have seen in multiple locations that if you are pumping from a well, uh, the connected on the nearby surface water body, the water declines over there also, to maintain the water pressure. Yeah. So we have done, we for a large large part of the 21st century, the organizations, government, and everyone, we started talking about the river basins and watershed. We started talking about integrated water management in terms of river basins and watershed, and which are the hydrological unit for the surface water. And we have just started talking about groundwater as a unit, because all groundwater, again, every time being an invisible resource, how is it depleting, and what are the impacts? We have just recently started realizing it and started working on the other hydrological unit for the groundwater. Now coming to the participatory groundwater management. So as it is clear from the name itself, participatory, which means that we have to include, we have to involve all the stakeholders for the groundwater management. So when we are talking about a rural setup, then who are the participants? The participant, the stakeholders are the community, the local institutions. There's a village and watershed, or village of water and sanitation committee. There is the Gram Panchayat, which are the Panchayati Raj institutions. So all those things are there. And then comes the local government. So we have to bring everyone together uh, for the groundwater management, which is called the participatory groundwater management. And the second aspect to the participatory groundwater management is bringing aquifer-based studies. So when we work on a watershed approach, or a basin approach, we uh, we create certain ponds, we create certain water conservation measures, but we have to take into account the aquifer studies also. So that so the participatory groundwater management considers involving people and aquifer based, the community centric approach. The other thing is the raising the community awareness. So when you involve people, when they start understanding the processes, when they start understanding the nitty-gritties of groundwater, how it is changing, when we start doing the water budgeting, when they start understanding like a bank account, what they have in their different accounts, how much they are using currently, how much can they use for next 5 years, 10 years, or 25 years down the lane. So what will be the condition when they start, when we start interacting with them, when they start being a part of the process of a larger process of water budgeting, where we see the surface water resources, where we see the groundwater resources, we see the different uses of water, be it domestic, be it industrial, be it agriculture, which is the largest user of groundwater in India and around the world as well. So that brings the community together when they see the real situation, and when they start taking actions, and then when they start making decisions for themselves, that's when the change happens on the ground. The other aspect to participating groundwater management is demystifying the groundwater science. So, for a community, for a rural community, if we say, when you start talking in terms of, say, aquifers or something, then that won't go for them. That's a too much a scientific term, which they won't be able to understand. But if you talk to them in terms of open wells and deeper bore wells, and they are much more aware than us how the water is changing, how the water levels are changing over the hydrological cycle over the year, and how is the groundwater quality is changing. So we can talk to them in terms of, like, we talk about shallow aquifers, we can talk in terms of the open bore wells, we talk about deeper aquifers, we can talk to them in terms of uh, the deeper bore wells, the agriculture bore wells, where they understand how the water is changing. And when we are working on the ground, actually we are not able to gather the real field data at all times, and we have to rely on the secondary data, which we call it as secondary data, but it is the data or the information generated or gathered from the user of that particular well. Then the other thing is talking about supply and demand side management. So when we talk about demand side management, then obviously it comes about the domestic usage, the efficient usage of domestic water. There should not be any leakages, there should not be any wastage of water and all those things. And the other thing is the cropping patterns for agriculture use, and the type of crop and other things when it comes to agriculture water demand. When it comes to supply, how to augment that supply with artificial recharge, because natural recharge is happening and much more happening in a rural setup than in an urban setup. But how we can augment the aquifers and the groundwater reserve by different recharge actions. So those things we talk about. The other thing we talk about is equal right to all users in a participatory groundwater management. And when a community comes together, then we can talk about the equal rights, because people have different land holdings, and not everyone can afford a deeper borewell. But groundwater being a common pool resource, if you withdraw water from one end, uh, in a sort of way, the water gets down from each level in an aquifer. The other thing I would like to talk about over here is the difference between a rural setup and urban setup. Uh, the groundwater withdrawal may be much more in a rural setup because of the agriculture demand, but the urbanization, the construction industry, how is it booming, and the level of urbanization we are seeing, the withdrawal in urban areas is not less. And the approach for the groundwater, the participating groundwater management in rural and urban, but that is not much different. There also we have to talk about the aquifer based approach. We have to bring all the stakeholders together. Definitely the stakeholders will be different over there. There will be local communities, there will be apartments, there will be societies, there will be ward members over there, there will be the local state government, and the local government, the state government. So the stakeholders might be different, but the approach towards participating groundwater management is more or less similar in a rural or urban setup. The next part of the participatory aquifer groundwater management is the managed aquifer recharge, which has basically sort of three components: the mapping, management, and regulatory framework. So the first thing is mapping, where you map the key groundwater sources. Like you do a mapping or an inventory sort of thing for the bore wells, for the tube wells, for the open wells, or any kind of groundwater sources. Then we map the aquifer and we create a recharge plan. So there in an area, in an urban setup, especially, we say in the case of Hyderabad, we are withdrawing water from 200 feet, we are withdrawing water from 400 feet, we are withdrawing water even from 900 and 1000 feet, and there are different aquifers from which we are withdrawing water. And the recharge plan, the aquifer management strategy is different for every aquifer. And we have to decide that which aquifer to recharge. And it should be a strategy not for an individual thing. It should be a strategy on a larger basis, because say for an individual household, if they start doing rainwater harvesting, uh, say for 200 feet or 300 feet where they are withdrawing water from, but nearby there are larger buildings which are withdrawing much more water from the deeper aquifers. So it is a community process, it is not a one person thing. So we should always come together, and we should all bring all the stakeholders together so that a aquifer recharge plan can be devised and that can be worked upon. The other thing is like the first thing, it should be the first thing actually of mapping of the stakeholders. We have to create a stakeholders database and what each stakeholders can bring, what each stakeholder can bring to the table, and how we can utilize uh, their capacities and how we can enhance their capacities towards the groundwater management. The second thing is management. Once the recharge plan, the aquifer recharge plan and aquifer mapping are done, then we decide on strategic recharge activities and how do we do those recharge activities. And then that then comes into what should be the different recharge activities could be there. We can create a recharge shaft, we can create infiltration galleries, we can recharge the open wells and duct wells. So when we have, after mapping the recharge plan, then we devise the different strategic recharge activities. And the third and the most important thing is creating a regulatory framework. So in the regulatory framework, we talk about how to secure groundwater from pollution. So we talked about how what groundwater is being polluted when the surface water is being polluted through introduction of municipal waste. So those things, and there can be other sources of groundwater pollution if directly there is some leak, if the leakages in the sewers and all sewage system, your drainage system, and that is leaking into the groundwater. The other thing, so we have to regulate the groundwater pollution and those things at a local level and at a state level. The other thing is change in course. So this is a very recent thing, and so I've been working for around groundwater for a longer time. But when I visited Pune recently, and I was working with Aquadam for a brief time, so I, they showed me something which was very much interesting, that when we are constructing a large building, when we are constructing an apartment sort of, the building goes up, there are multi-story building, and similarly there is a basement there, and for basement we are removing a large amount of aquifer materials which is changing the course of groundwater. And there are many issues with the change in the course of groundwater when you excavate and remove the aquifer materials totally, which is never being filled, actually which is being filled by an impervious layer of concrete. So when there is a change in the course of groundwater, there are much more issues. So we have to create certain regulatory frameworks for to see that there is no large change in the course of groundwater. The other thing is protection of recharge zones. So when we do the aquifer mapping and recharge plan, we create sort of maps where we define that, okay, these are the recharge zones in an area and these are the discharge zones in the area. So from the discharge zones, you can withdraw water. The recharge zone are the low-lying areas, the perfect areas where you can the water goes to the deeper aquifers, which are the good recharge points. So we have to protect our recharge zones. So recharge zones are basically, if you see in your city, the marshy areas and all are the recharge zones. And if those marshy areas and all are being polluted by dumping of solid waste or the municipal or domestic waste, then it is a large issue, because that leaches and goes directly to the deeper aquifers. Secondly, if there is a layer of say a silt and something in those recharge zones, then water does not go down. So because we have done a lot of concretization in our cities, protection of those recharge zones is a very important thing when it comes to participatory groundwater management. The last thing I would like to talk about how climate change is related to groundwater, and I think it is clear to every one of us that if there is less surface water. So we can see how climate change impacts the surface water. There is somewhere there is scanty rainfall and the surface water bodies don't get filled up. There is a lot of evaporation due to global warming. So there is less storage in the surface water bodies. And what happens when there is less storage? We rely on the groundwater reserve. So groundwater being a perfect solution for a drought resilience. Because when there is no surface water, we rely on groundwater. So if we don't augment our groundwater reserves, if we don't protect our groundwater reserves, there is no other way to fight the climate resilience or drought resilience we are facing directly, which we can see with the surface water. The other thing which we see is ground subsidence, the sinkholes and the ground subsidence and sinkholes and all those things. When there is a lot more withdrawal of water, these things become much more evident, and the soil becomes loose. It starts to uh, the sinkholes and landslides, and all those things are results. So there are multiple other things which are behind these, but the larger withdrawal of groundwater is being one of them. The other thing is leaching of nutrients and pesticides. So there is agriculture and all, and we put in a lot of nutrients, a lot of pesticides, where the water, with water going down, these nutrients and these pesticides also leach into the shallow aquifers, so which causes a lot of issues. The other thing is wastewater collection and treatment. So I was talking about the protection of recharge zones. So when these wastewater is being dumped in those marshy areas, or when grey water and all those things are not being treated properly, then some way or other they leaches into the groundwater, and we have to protect all these things. The other thing is management of coastal aquifers. So in a coastal area, when we start going deeper and deeper, there is intrusion of saline water. And once there is intrusion of saline water to a particular aquifer, it is, so we are working in Vijayanagram, and we are facing a lot of issues over there. Vijayanagram being a coastal area, so we are working over there in 3 coastal Gram Panchayat. And because of deeper uh, borewells and all, we are facing issues of saline intrusion into these aquifers, which are creating a lot of problems. So we have to manage those coastal aquifers, and we have to ensure that we largely use the surface water bodies rather than the groundwater aquifers in coastal areas. The other thing being, we all know rainwater harvesting and all those things. So we have to augment our groundwater through artificial recharge, where this is not possible through the natural recharge in an urban setup or something. And the other thing being climate resilient cropping, where so that there is agriculture use efficiency can be maintained using climate resilient cropping. I think with that, I'll land over here. I think that covers a little bit some background of how groundwater behaves, how we can bring people in. Why should actually, instead of how, it is about why, mostly why we should do this, and there is some how in it, how we should do this. And I think this is what I would like to cover in the presentation. And if we have some questions, we can go ahead and just, I think that will be much more useful if it is an interactive session rather than me just blabbing on.
Thank you, Utkarsh. Thank you so much. I'd like to call upon Vishwa's founder, Shrivani ma'am, to take the Q&A session forward. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Before we move on to our question and answer session, I would like to request the audience to take 30 seconds to answer a poll for us. The purpose of this poll is to help us understand you a little better, so we can better curate the topics that we will bring to you. You can also let us know in the chat box how you found out about WishwaTalks. If you are a WishwaTalks subscriber, heard about it through friends or family, or found out about the event on social media. I would like to express my gratitude to everybody who has joined us today with their presence. And I hope we will have a very good interactive session with each of you. I extend my gratitude to our speaker, Mr. Utkarsh Upadhyaya, for taking your time to grace this event. For a subject on environment, very few people. Trishant, can the slide be removed? Yeah.
Sir, could you please stop sharing your screen?
Very few people actually are interested in our environment, though all of us are impacted right now. We just completed the COVID times. We finished our summer, which was extremely hot. We're having rains where many cities and towns are completely submerged in water. Yet, when it comes to awareness about environment, very few people are interested. I would like to thank and appreciate WaterAid and all the staff, all the people working at WaterAid for the kind of service you're doing to our nation. I am also thankful to each and every one of the participants for being interested in knowing about what's happening to our Mother Earth and how we can participate, at least to bring in awareness into this situation. I'd like to talk a little bit about Vishwa, our mission and how we can contribute. It's an online platform for everyday change makers like the WaterAid and social app champions. It's a crowdfunding and a crowdsourcing platform. It is aimed at helping any one of you to find the support you need in your efforts to fulfill dreams for yourselves or for others to make our world a beautiful place. In addition to thought-provoking talks as the one hosted today, we also want to extend our curiosity for exploration to our youth and young ones as well. We have launched 2 new segments of WishwaTalks, namely WishwaTalks Youth and WishwaTalks Junior, to facilitate learning and important conversations in the bright minds of young children, of the new generation that's coming up. Please stay up to date and if you know any schools and colleges who would be interested in listening to such talks, please ensure that they subscribe to WishwaTalks Junior and Youth today. We also have WishwaTalks material. Imagine living in an economy where sharing is truly caring. And whatever you don't need, whether it is books, electronics, furniture, etc., can easily be listed and picked up by members of your society. Vishwa Materials is a crowdsourcing platform designed to distribute materials in your local communities. We have around 150 slums around Hyderabad. Last Diwali and Ugadi, we had a very successful campaign where truckloads full have been collected, and we were able to cover 3 slums in Hyderabad. More participation the coming Diwali, I'm sure, will ensure that we can ensure that old items are recycled and given to people who really need them. Most of these students, most of these children in these slums are actually degree holders or going to colleges and all. And they came up and said, hey, listen, we actually have our entire year's requirement of clothes taken care of by you. Thank you so much, is what they had told us. The idea for us is nothing goes to waste, and there is something for everyone. It's a crowdsourcing platform for local communities to list and exchange items for free. We also have some success stories, Vishwa Annadanam, where we have been donating to near hospitals food. What happens is many of these people come from far areas, from Orissa, from Chhattisgarh, from sometimes even Assam. And whatever little money they have, they use it for medicines or for the hospital expenses. So they go hungry. And when we have been doing our Annadanam campaigns there's been a lot of gratitude. And fortunately, we've seen some of the WishwaTalks speakers actually contribute to the Vishwa Annadanam. Thank you so much for that. We've also seen, now in WishwaTalks Annadanam campaign, we are looking at printing pamphlets on nutritious food for different age groups, right from mothers, pregnant mothers, to mothers who've had babies, to babies, food, to premenopausal and senior citizens and patients who need recovery. We would like to print and distribute in these 150 slums. And we're also looking at having workshops in these areas because of urbanization, there's a lot of migration happening from small towns to cities. And in the process, they're losing the environment which used to naturally provide them with the 360 degrees nutrition. And though I wouldn't say that probably there are people going around without food, what I would definitely say is there are a lot of undernourished people in our cities and towns. So we're looking at bringing in awareness about nutrition through the Annadanam campaign also. There was also a principal who had put a campaign in Vishwa for his student who used to walk 11 kilometers. She had cerebral palsy. And it was a very successfully funded project. And we want more of you to have your fundraisers in Vishwa. We have Kanashraya Foundation and Bal Vikas Education Society who are having fundraisers at Vishwa. Most of us have seen someone in our families or friends or in our circles who have children who are who have autism or who are disabled. The parents sacrifice their entire life taking care of them, their careers, their happiness. Here we have these two organizations which not only take on these children, they also are training them to become as independent as possible, and if possible to even earn their own living. Please feel free to share and donate to them, or share about these fundraisers to people you know who can donate. We also have donate nutritious food for children living with HIV/AIDS. It's an organization called Network of Telangana People Living with HIV and AIDS, NTP. Statistics have showed that all the children that have HIV/AIDS were born with it. Telangana state has 2,300 children living with HIV. The lack of general awareness about HIV has forced the children with HIV into the worst form of child labor just to support themselves. To give back these children their childhood they have lost. The Network of Telangana People Living with HIV/AIDS has been providing nutritious food to 100 such children every month. They're looking for your help to support them in achieving and increasing their goal. Your contribution is an 1,800 rupees can support an entire month's food of this child. So please feel free to donate or share it with people who you know. We also have our upcoming talks, Health and Family Welfare by Dr. Vrishali Reddy. She's a clinical psychologist and consultant. The topic is Understanding Prenatal Influences and Conscious Parenting. It's on 5th August, 2023, 11 a.m. We have Rahul Singla, founder, Bachpan Save the Innocence, Understanding Gender Identity, on 12th August, 11 a.m. We have Radhika Iyer Talati, a very special lady. She's the trustee of founder of Ra Foundation. She's having a talk on the introduction of Kundalini on 19th August 2023, 11 a.m. Lastly, please take a moment to subscribe to WishwaTalks to get alerts on every new and exciting talk, exclusive events, and access to Vishwa community. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn for future updates. Please do subscribe to WishwaTalks. And for those of you who are a regular attendees of WishwaTalks, please ensure you have pressed the WishwaTalks subscription button, because otherwise we cannot tell you what are the talks. We cannot send you WhatsApp messages or mails without your assent. Yeah, and also please share it with your friends and family, because the topics we are doing to bring in awareness among our country, among our communities, and we need to bring in this awareness in these areas. Yeah, now I'll move on to the question and answer session. How to participate in water aid organizations to work about awareness about environment. Utkarsh.
So actually in an urban setup or even the rural setup also, we have community volunteers. So apart from the regular staff, we involve volunteers, the youth, the women especially, uh, to be involved in the processes which we do, may it be say water security planning or aquifer mapping. So these exercises, when we do from the very beginning, we involve the community volunteers, we involve the organizations, and we involve the resident welfare associations. So other the community stakeholders, as I was talking about, we try to involve as many of them in the processes we do.
Sir, if anybody in this community who just listened, heard you out, if they want to do something in their communities, can they reach out to anyone in WaterAid?
Sure. They can reach out to our Hyderabad office. If we are talking about the context of Hyderabad, if there is anything related to wash, not just water, sanitation or hygiene, they can reach out to us, and we can help out them in the capacity we have.
Okay. There is one, you'll be sharing the details in the chat box.
Sure, I'll do. Dishant, can maybe.
Okay. Next question from Mr. Manoj Kumar. Dear sir, are you also going to share some particular practical actionable items, case studies of those solutions? I just want to add something here. Trishant, last talk we had of a person from Pune and Gujarat who'd actually taken his initiative and worked on his own community. Can you just talk for 2 minutes about it?
Yes, sure. So Suraj Joshi is the founder of a small independent organization called Project Retrofit. And he's been convincing people in his area, in his localities, in Gujarat, in Pune, to go back to some old methods and see how water flows on your street, plant trees so that there is lesser problems of erosion, there is lesser problems of flooding. He basically taught everybody how to go about turning your place more green and more ecologically balanced with very simple techniques. And he took us through a street view of his whole lane and showed us the activities performed in a particular fashion. That's about it.
Yeah. Mr. Manoj, would you like to answer that question? Sorry, Utkarsh, would you like to answer that question?
Can you repeat the question again?
Some practical, actionable items or case studies.
Yeah,
are you also
we
going
have
to share some? Yeah.
So actually, we have, as WaterAid, we have just started working on these, but there are multiple other organizations. I was talking about Aqua Dam. There are other organizations in Hyderabad. Vasan is there, so who are working on participatory groundwater management. And I have some case studies I can share around. Not an issue.
Can you share it now or later on?
I'll share later on. I'll search and share.
Okay. There is a question from Shmuel Shalmi from Israel, actually. I have a few general questions. If we are willing to take your presentation outside of India, how, according to you, smart management of groundwater and aquifers can support resolution problems of water storage in poor and underdeveloped countries?
In that
let him ask his question also. He wants to ask it himself. I'll let him answer. Can you unmute yourself, Mr. Shmuel?
Yeah, I hear. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to ask you next question. How smart management of ground waters and aquifers can support resolution problems of poor and developing countries around the world, and firstly, countries of Africa, Asia, like India, example, and Latin America.
So I think that the context and the approach won't change anywhere. Just one more thing that what I mentioned in the presentation involving communities and all. The other thing I would like to mention is that we will have to go back to the shallow aquifer resources and the uh, surface water resources. So actually what happened all over the world, I'm sure of India, but I believe all over the world, uh, we started going deeper into aquifers, deeper into the earth for the search of water, when we were told by the government, by WHO and other eminent organizations that the surface water or the shallow groundwater which we find in our open wells is unfit for drinking, because there was open defecation and there was bacteriological contamination which was easily visible and which had a quick impact on our health. So diarrhea was there and all those things were happening due to the bacteriological contamination we were facing. And they told us that this is totally unfit water for drinking and we have to rely on the deeper groundwater. But the issue with deeper groundwater is that there is chemical contamination. We are hearing about fluoride coming in, we are hearing about arsenic coming in and other heavy metals which are coming from the deeper aquifers due to the geological formation. Those things we can't control, but the issues regarding the bacteriological contamination are all anthropogenic, and those we can control easily with a minor treatment and all. So apart from involving community and after involving community, we should always go back to the resources which are visible, which we can manage easily rather than going deeper and deeper. So I think that approach works all over the world in any developing country.
One question from Mr. Surapanini Prasad. As per CWGA guidelines, industries drawing more than 10 cubic meters of water should have a groundwater monitoring telemetry system. Is the government regulation adequate according to you? Also, on the domestic side, there seems to be no permission sought by individuals before digging bowels. How do we arrest indiscriminate digging of bowels?
So when it comes to the groundwater legislation and the bylaws governed by different bodies, so you are talking about CGWA and so different states and different municipalities have different regulations and all. When it comes to industries, obviously they ask for piezometers and other telemetric system to regulate the groundwater. But I think I have worked with my fair share of industries I have worked with. I don't see it being followed anywhere. And when it comes to domestic also, I think there is no such regulation regarding groundwater withdrawal. In some cities, I have seen that there is a regulation regarding that you have to take permission from uh, the municipal board, and there, so taking example of Ranchi, that there is a regulation that if you don't do rainwater harvesting at your place, you have to pay higher holding tax. So certain regulatory measures have been taken, but I believe that they are not being enforced as much as they should. The other thing is, before making these regulatory measures, we have to in this regulatory measures enforcing and everything should also be a participatory thing, and we have to bring people and stakeholders together to talk about that what should be these regulatory measures. So in a small setup, in a rural setup, in a small village, these regulatory measures can be taken just by the Gram Panchayat. In an urban setup also, we have to bring people in. If you suddenly come and tell them that, okay, you can draw this much of water, I don't think that will work, and there can be an outrage from people. So again, this has to be a participatory thing. Yes.
Okay, there is a question from Ms. Nina Kurkal. What about the rainwater storage on the terrace?
So I think what my experience is that storing the rainwater we can't do in India. So we have rainfall, we receive rainfall for 2 to 3 months, and now the invariability is such that we don't receive rainfall even for 2 3 months. We receive rainfall for 15 to 20 days, heavy rainfall. And what used to happen earlier is, say, in the case of Hyderabad, we receive 800 rainfall. That 800 rainfall used to be in phases, and that maybe could have been could be stored. But now, if you are receiving 100 rainfall in a day or 80 rainfall in a day, you can't create a storage for your rooftop even. So you will receive at least 10,000 or 20,000 liters of rainfall in a day. Then, but you can't create a 10,000 or 20,000 liter storage in your house. So the best thing is to recharge. So it's like again a bank. You are taking money out of it and you recharge it rather than storing it. I've not seen storage of rainwater working as such. There's a lot of overflow and the water goes out to drain because we can't create that larger storage.
Okay. What do you think? What I've heard about is the Kaleshwar lift irrigation project is taking water to all over the Telangana villages. Almost 98 villages have been are being supplied with water. However, what is happening is the village committees, which were previously functioning and working towards groundwater recharge and water management, are now, because of no water issues, are being dismantled or not functioning. Now, God forbid something happens and the lift irrigation does not work. Our traditional systems of the village committees, which has been working for hundreds and thousands of years, is collapsed. What is your view on this?
So I think the one thing which I've realized is that if there is something being done for the community without any ownership by the community towards that system, towards an infrastructure, there is no sustainability. And we work a lot around that whatever we provide in water aid to the communities and all, to make it more sustainable, there should be some kind of ownership developed. So ownership for those things, we take some kind of financial support from them. We ask them to be physically involved, say in the construction process, or if it is a services and exercise I was talking, the community volunteers. So if there is no ownership developed, then whether it is a government scheme, because government works for a certain period of time. They have like today there is Jal Jeevan Mission. Earlier there would be something, and these projects and all these things are for a limited period of time. When that time ends, there is no more fund for the operation and maintenance. So if there is no ownership with the community, I believe that these systems and all are bound to fail. Talking about the Kalesham lift irrigation project, I think I was talking about it that when there is no surface water, you have to rely on the groundwater. And again, you have to augment that, you have to protect all those things, that when you don't have surface water, at least you can rely on the groundwater. But if you start extracting and start depleting the groundwater reserves from day one, I think we won't have any resource, surface or groundwater to use.
I understand the pipelines coming from the Kaleshwar. They go to villages and they're not even taps, and the water just continuously flows. On the one side, we're using the fossil fuels, the coal, to lift the water in Kaleshwaram. And there, because of non-participatory, as you said, and lack of awareness in the villages, water is continuously flowing out of those pipes, which is a complete wastage, is one outlook. Another outlook, what I'm seeing is, we are spending lakhs of rupees on the lift irrigation. to irrigate paddy and such crops which take in that water, which is not economically viable? What is your opinion on that?
So again, there has been a lot of talk regarding at least growing paddy and cotton in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana both. And we are overgrowing these crops much more than our need. And what happens that if you start overgrowing these, there is a lot of groundwater withdrawal. And that is an issue. There has been some talk about it at government level also, and government is aware about that. So that's why there has been an increase and started talking about millet rather than growing millet rather than other crops. So we have to obviously start thinking about that. Like what there's a saying in Hindi ke jitna ho utna hi pair pasarte hain hum log. So whatever we have, we can only so we have to decide the cropping patterns and all those things looking at the water reserves we have. And talking about the Kaleshwaram again, one thing, the issue is last mile delivery. So if there is no last mile delivery, I think the farmer would like to dig a borewell in his farm and get water over there rather than depending that okay, water will come to my farm. So he can. That's the issue. That is from the green revolution itself. That that's what the so the after post independence, India thought that we'll make it again. Everything will connect it through canal system and dams and everything. It will go and it will reach household. But just because there was no last mile delivery, people have to rely on those introduction of those deeper borewells and all. That is an issue, and people have started talking about it. Let's see when we start working in that direction.
So basically there is there cropping pattern being followed by the state governments? Do they advise the farmers on the cropping pattern that should be followed to balance out the water usage?
They do. So like there has been a good introduction of millet and good seeds and all everything, and there is a lot more awareness by the government and the civil society organizations also regarding the cropping pattern, climate resilient cropping. We talk about, so I work with few civil society organizations in Jharkhand, and we were working through a grant by NABARD, and we realized that okay, the procedure in NABARD also changed, and they started working on climate resilient soil and conservation method, agricultural methods, other than uh, the traditional practices of irrigation and all those things.
Okay. The next question is from Lisbon Ferrar. Can groundwater harvesting be done even if there is water 20 or 30 feet below? Where can I find more information on how I can start groundwater harvesting?
So I was talking about different aquifers. So when we talk about aquifers, we have different, so I was talking about that water is available at 200 feet, 500 feet, 900 feet. Obviously, if the water is available in what you are talking about 20 feet, 30 feet, that is a shallow aquifer. And if the groundwater table is that high, if you start recharging, then it won't work because there is a certain capacity of the topsoil to take water. So then there will be ponding of water near your recharge site and all. So that way we have to define, we can't do that. That's where aquifer mapping comes in. We can't do recharge at every point. We can't do recharge at every depth also. So we have to decide those recharge locations depending upon the geology. We have to decide which aquifer or which depth we have to recharge the water at, and that should be a strategy on a larger level rather than an individual level. But like you are asking that if you want to do individually, where should you start? So you can start from like you're saying 20 or 30 feet, you can start from inventorizing the bore wells in your nearby area and understanding the aquifers in your nearby area. That, okay, so it is a limestone or something. I can help you out how to do the aquifer mapping, and there are tons of uh, studies and data available over the internet. Uh, the Central Groundwater Authority and Central Groundwater Board, they have a larger aquifer management plan they are doing all over India. So some data can be available to you without you doing the studies, also with the local groundwater directorate and board.
All right. I have the reason I'm asking this question is that I stay in an area in Palghar, it's in the outskirts of Mumbai. And every year, this whole area is prone to flooding because we stay in the coastal area as well, and there is water below the ground as well. Now, since the last 10 years, because of the huge amount of development that is there, now there is always flooding. And even there, this year as well, there was flooding, this huge amount of flooding, and most of the people's houses are underwater. What do we do with, how do we tackle all this flooding of water that is happening every year, and it's getting even more worse?
So I'll tell you two things over here. The first thing is we have to create water sensitive urban design, and our drainage system are not made up to take the amount of water, to take the load of the population reaching these urban cities. They are not made for that. And the other thing is our drainage system are a combined drainage system where the sewage, the storm water, the direct rainwater from your houses, everything goes together. When there is sort of a flash flood kind of thing or high intensity rainfall, it is bound to have a drainage failure. And that is the condition we are seeing every year. And the number of cities which are facing these issues is increasing and increasing. The two major reasons being the domestic overload, the population coming to these large cities every day, and secondly, the invariability of rainfall that we are getting, sort of a flash flood kind of thing. To solve these, we have to do, like I was telling, water sensitive urban design, where I can give you a few examples of that we create infiltration galleries on the side of the roads. So there is drainage, we create infiltration galleries. So rather than water going, because it's everywhere, it is impermeable. And when you are talking about outskirts of Mumbai, I think that will be impermeable as well, concrete everywhere. There's no space for water to go in, so we have to create certain pockets. We have to create certain infiltration galleries where the storm water can go in. Obviously, we can't improve and increase the drainage size and everything in one go, but these infiltration galleries and other things we can do. There's a concept of sponge cities also, which is more prevalent in South Asian countries, where new urban setups are designed on a basis of sponge cities, where there are certain pockets, the low-lying areas, and certain pockets where the water can be taken down easily.
When the government is willing to spend money on roads, on the golden quadrilateral, how is it that this awareness is not there in the government, where every city, whether it is Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, Calcutta, Chennai, is being, at the time of rainy season, the citizens of the cities are suffering. And these municipalities are very, very, very rich. And yet, they do not give importance to urban design. We have government officials going to Singapore, to Malaysia, to name it, to all the international cities. How come the public for better drainage system in the country, and how come the country and the government also does not give the same importance it gives to roads, to the drainage systems? Any idea?
I don't have any idea as such, but what I believe is that so I think there was some stand-up comedy I was listening to one day, and I'm just relating to that we have in what government is thinking of, what maybe the people sitting in higher positions are thinking, that we have more prevalent issues to deal with. Like we are still dealing with water access and availability. These issues, the issues, the failure with urban design, the grey water management or fecal sludge management, these issues uh, have not started, I would say, but start coming in the news and everything. People started working with is very recent. But we have larger issues of water access, sanitation access. So the government is focusing on those first and using large chunk of their uh, budgets and all goes to those things rather than focusing on urban design. But when it comes to constructing smart cities, I can take the example of Trivandrum or New Raipur. So there I have seen that some kind of infrastructure is being developed, and you're talking about golden quadrilateral. I think that some they are creating corridors for wildlife. So some thought is going in, but obviously they are not able to take everything into account and doing an integrated sort of thing, rather than they're doing just few things and few pockets.
Is it because the people, whether the mayors, whether the municipal commissioners, is it that they are not educated or they don't understand the gravity of the issue? What is the reason that in spite of having rich municipalities, at least, in a phased manner, certain areas are started to, where they implement urban design, at least in certain pockets, as a beginning? Why isn't that happening?
I think they are educated, and you yourself said that they are going to Singapore and other for these exposure visits and all. And I recently went on an exposure visit to other countries for the urban sanitation, and I was accompanied by a few mayors from India. So I know that those exposure visits are happening. They are very much aware about that. But I think, but I have not worked in the government sector in that system, so I won't like to comment as such. But I think there's some talk is happening somewhere in some pockets. They are trying to do that, but not at the level they should.
Is it because there's no demand from the public for it? Is it because there's lack of awareness and demand from the public for it?
Definitely, there is lack of awareness and lack of demand. So that has always been an issue. But I think wherever, like I see, like when you're talking about urban flooding and all, regarding urban flooding, there is a lot of awareness. People realize why is it happening. Some things comes in news, something doesn't comes in news, but people are aware about it, at least in terms of urban flooding. But I think we'll have to look into what is the issue, that after having municipalities being rich and having so much money, why are they not investing as such in the uh, urban infrastructure?
One question from Trishant, please.
Yes, thank you. So in the last 15 years, what I've noticed is every tier 1 and tier 2 cities, we've been building roads really rapidly. We will build, but in the process of building roads, we are not leaving any space beside the road for the water to seep into the ground. Now, this is a step that is being done repeatedly in all the states over the last 20 years without any correction or iteration to the process. Now we are doing the same thing with the river bodies. Like right now, there's a lot of Pune riverfront like development project opposition going on, and similarly in many cities, except like example Ahmedabad, Sabarmati river development project, they've been adding a whole lot of concrete and cement beside the water bodies to beautify it. How do you think this is going to affect the groundwater in the future, the river beautification projects and everything?
So I can good that you chose Pune riverfront thing, because I've seen the work over there, and I can directly tell you that because I was going around with Aquadam team and all, and we were in detail discussing about the riverfront development in Pune, especially. So one thing which was pretty much clear, that in Pune there are a lot of springs. So usually when springs come to our mind, we go back to Himalayas or hilly areas that springs would be there, not in a plain geography. Though Pune is not totally plain, it is covered by hillocks and all. But there are a lot of groundwater springs which contribute to the rivers. So the river over there is not just rain fed, it is spring fed also. And definitely, even I have seen that those springs not being contributing, and further those springs being dead because of the concretization. So I think the intrusion, the interaction between surface water and groundwater will be inhibited by this concretization, and which will have a much larger impact. So either we will be left with only one resource and maybe not even one.
Thank you.
That's a fantastic insight you've given us about springs and the riverfront. Great question, Prashant. I have to ask, is there anywhere a good, see, actually, I'll tell you my experience. I have planted 20,000 trees in a place called Tanku. And recently I saw, due to the concretization of the roads, they've cut out fully grown trees and put roads till the edge so that there's no water percolation down. Summer is beating. It's terribly hot. In the summer, they remove the trees. And then they put this. I want to ask on behalf of Mr. Lisbon, is there no urban design available online where you say, okay, on one side of the road, you have electrical poles and the drainage system. On the other side, you have the stormwater drainage system. Is there such a design that can be implementable across the entire country, whether it's a 40 feet road, 20 feet road, or a 100 feet road? Can there be a design that can be implemented? Is it available?
I'm not sure about the availability of designs. What I am aware about is that there are master plans. And there are 25 years master plan, there are 50-year master plans for development of a particular city. And I have seen the case you are telling. I have seen while I was studying in Ranchi, and we used to go to university, and it was a 30-kilometer stretch, and it was a state highway which got converted into a national highway, and they removed all the trees. And then that cycle starts. That okay, there were trees, there was a lot of shade. We were going, say, in a car, then we had our window shades down and we were enjoying the air. But as it became hotter, we started using air conditions, and then switching on air condition to lower temperature. That releases more CFC, which depletes ozone. Again, the temperature rises, and then we lower down the temperature further, and it's a cycle which is happening because of the unplanned development. And unplanned development is happening everywhere. The trees are being cut everywhere. So there are master plans, and master plan says that before cutting these trees, you have to grow a similar amount or a larger amount of trees somewhere else. But what is happening due to this is a larger issue. So I did a study on the forest cover, on a green belt cover in Jharkhand. What I noticed, what in the last 20 years, the green cover has increased, but in patches. So obviously, when they are doing a development, they remove. So there was a forest on both sides of the state highway. There some habitation started because of the road development. The trees started cutting down. Now, instead of a large forest, it is the patches of forest. And patches of forest, small patches of forest, don't act in environmental development in such a way that a large forest does. So there are issues. Master plans are there with every cities, but they are not being taken into account. And even say we start working now, and master plan for the next 25 years we are creating now, but by the time that starts implementing, the 25-year dies. The other issue I have seen is with the So for any development activity, we have to do a social impact assessment and an environmental impact assessment. In real field, I have seen that these studies are not being taken into account as they should be. So for a flyover construction or something, road construction, they are doing social impact assessment. For land acquisition, they are doing environmental impact assessment for removing these trees and all. So again, the regulatory bodies are not behaving in the manner they should. NGT, we hear many days that NGT is giving some law, passing some law, but when it comes to these development activities, when it comes to regulating and enforcing that the body, the government body or private body do these environmental impact assessment on as they should do, these things are not regulated by the regulatory bodies and NGT and all those things. There are issues over there. Sorry, I
Would you
think
like to talk about the Auroville issue where, in spite of the National Tribunal giving orders, it's not being implemented?
I'm not aware of that fact.
I'll
No,
just
it's
give you-
just an extension to what you're saying, that, though regulatory bodies sometimes make it a point to do take act or give orders, that it is not actually being implemented.
I think
Yeah.
every
I-
law, everywhere there are loopholes, and just I think this is.
I'd like to
Jen-
bring a
Sure.
few points to your notice, Utkarsh. So I spent a considerable amount of time in Auroville, which is dedicated to creating an ecological balance and protecting indigenous species of trees and creating water bodies again, which basically balance the whole ecosystem. And the whole barren land was converted into a forest in the last 50 years. And recently, right after COVID, what was noticed?
One second, Prashant, I'll add to your point. The entire south of India was deforested colonial times. We had rich sandalwood forest, mahogany. We had an evergreen forest, which was always green in spite of the summers. Now, when the colonizers went, they took they chopped the wood, they went away with it. Now we had barren earth left. Water is, the soil on the topsoil is going into the sea. Now we have people in Auroville who've come from France, from Britain, from Scotland, and they have spent 50 years, 30 years going across the Coromandel coast. They would go to a temple, they would find 2 indigenous trees, pick up the seeds and make it 10 trees, then 200, and then 10,000, and have made the soils in Auroville, in and around Auroville, filled with the indigenous forests. Okay. And these indigenous forests, Trishant, please continue. I've interrupted you because the South needs indigenous forests. What the government is doing is they'll either put an entire eucalyptus trees or they'll put neem trees. That's not how forests should be afforested. We need to put indigenous trees which belong to those areas, because even in the summer, they don't need water. The original inhabitants, the insects, the birds, the creatures come back to those areas when indigenous trees are planted. Now, in spite of greening, though, in the last 50 years, areas around Auroville, carry on.
So you have indigenous trees which help you nurture the soil nutrients and everything. During the COVID time, what happened? There was a power shift and the Auroville Council head was changed. And they decided to go with the present model of development. They started removing all the trees that were, like a lot of trees that were planted in the several years before. And they started making roads. Again, removing all the areas that can absorb water, even destroying a whole created water regenerative space. There was a space created in this particular community called Darkali Forest. And a lot of trees, 800 trees that I planted got cut off in one night. So it is very painful. It is very stressful to see something like this happening. So instead of being more aware about the fact that we should plant more indigenous trees, though even those actions were reversed and they started planting again more foreign species that will grow faster with lesser water, which basically deteriorate the soil. So there's no harmony in basically development and nature, balancing nature in a way.
And the National Tribunal had actually given an order saying that they cannot cut those trees. And yet the Aurovillian, the new council which came, disregarded the orders and cut off those trees. And those people who have sacrificed their entire lifetimes, their salaries, their income, and put everything into afforesting these areas, they have left the country because they're living under threat that your visa will be revoked if you open your mouth.
They are blacklisted several times for protesting. It's very painful. It's
I think we keep hearing these stories everywhere around India. So there was a case of RA, there was a case of a forest near Goa. So I think the situation is pretty much similar everywhere. And I totally agree. So I think we should be against eucalyptus. So growing eucalyptus is because it grows faster, but it takes a lot of moisture from the topsoil as well to grow. So eucalyptus is just for growing out forest. Eucalyptus, I think, would be the worst kind of plantation that would require. We should definitely rely on indigenous plantation, and so there's a concept of rain garden, and we have tried to develop a rain garden in Kondapur in Hyderabad. So there also the concept and the thing say that we should grow only indigenous plants, which requires less maintenance, and they can, after a certain period of time, they can grow by themselves. And those plantations are as per the soil availability. So that behaves in a certain way and helps in much more percolation. They make the soil porous in certain way. So we have to use the indigenous varieties for everything. I think that indigenous varieties and traditional practices we should go back to. So that's what I believe in, I think.
Is there a way of decentralization? Previously, I heard that there were townships which the local industries would manage, where in spite of it being probably within the Mumbai municipality, the local area could manage their own townships. Do you feel decentralization would be able to help people like Lisbon and all manage their own areas, where the income, the taxes coming from that areas could be spent in the areas that are important to them, like water logging and all can be addressed if the taxes from that area can at least be used on what is a priority for them? Is there any anything like that happening around the country?
In terms of funds being used for particular
in terms of, like, you have local panchayats, let the gram panchayat take its own decision. Let the local, even in Mumbai, let the local community take its own decision on how the taxes that they are collecting in their locality can be used for the benefit of addressing the critical and urgent areas of their locality. Imagine houses being drowned with water. Why can't they use their income in their localities? Is there something like this happening across the country? Is there a model like this? Is it possible?
I don't know. So in everything, in every aspect, when it comes to water management or fund management or anything, we have tried the centralized way everywhere, and it has not worked. It has not worked at all. So we are relying on decentralization, or maybe not decentralization, semi-centralization, where we do a hybrid model, some kind of in situ, we do some kind of small habitation level. I'm talking about water treatment now. So we do in those things, but when I don't think it is happening at that level. Still, the government thinks on a centralized way only. So they will create STPs, they'll create something, they'll create larger water supply schemes. But decentralization works because, like, smaller organizations like WaterAid, which can't be at par with government. I think no organization can be at par with government. So we work on decentralizing everything. So it works when it comes to Gram Panchayat. Obviously, they have certain funds and they use funds obviously, some ways the Gram Panchayat head and Sarpanch and all, they invest money wherever they want to, but somewhere we have seen that that's a participatory process. It is being discussed in the Gram Sabha and all, and we help in developing of GPDP plan, the Gram Panchayat development plans or village action plans, and those things are talked about that where those funds should be used in what is the uh, priority. There are focus group discussions we do. So there is a process in rural setup, but in an urban thing, I have not seen that happening even at a municipal level. There is a very little fund available with the ward member and Asha and other things, and I don't think they work in that manner that something can be decentralized. I've seen that in rural, but not in an urban setting.
Does it happen in other parts of the world?
No,
I have a
I'm
question
not
here.
sure. Yeah.
Here where I work, there are around 7 beaches, and 2 or 3 of beaches are under the Gram Panchayat. Now I stay close to the coastal where there is a lot of mangroves. Now wherever there is Gram Panchayat, the garbage that the village generates, the municipal does not come and pick it up. So what they do is they take this garbage and they dump it on the mangroves. So that when the sea level comes, it takes it away, and their troubles are done. The other problem is with the Gram Panchayat where I'm staying is they're encroaching on the mangroves and doing a lot of land filling. And I mean, there is a Sarpanch who is who's 10th pass and who's never worked from the last 25 years. And suddenly 4 years ago, he opens a 5 crore resort. Where does this money come? Where does these funds come? I even approached him and I told him is that if your village is willing to segregate your garbage, and I will pick up the plastic, or the whole village plastic. But he's saying we don't have funds, we don't have this. So that is another problem. Now with the municipal is they don't want to support us because they don't want to look bad. Because then people will question is, if we're paying you taxes, what are you doing? Why are NGOs or why individuals trying to help? So in the last 6-7 years in my cleanup, the municipal has just come once or twice just to click pictures and go off. So they click pictures with everybody, and then the only thing that they do is they come and pick up the garbage that I have collected. I am also signed an MOU with the Mangrove Foundation. So the Mangrove Foundation is offering me gloves and possible breakfast, but I have to send them a bill. I offer breakfast and gloves to everybody, and I told them I don't need gloves and I don't need. I can afford to give breakfast, but there's other things that I need. I need a lot of dustbins. I once asked the local cooperator for 30 dustbins on that beach. He gave me 2 dustbins. I ended up putting 3 dustbins of my own, and then they get robbed. So there's a lot of that's one. The other problem is that I've seen is that you have a lot of coconuts falling onto the beach, and eventually these coconuts turn into trees. But people start robbing the coconuts because coconut sapling around here is around 300 or 400 rupees. So they don't allow the coconuts to grow. There is a lot of sand mafia that is taking the sand for construction. So most of the 7 beaches are unhealthy and they are dying. So eventually what will happen is then they will start putting rocks so that the water levels don't come higher. So it is difficult to work with the government because they don't want to look bad. They don't want to give you any of the funds. The Mangrove Foundation has 700 crores, I heard, that is lying with them, but they don't want to give anything. And it doesn't make sense to me is that you don't want to spend money. You don't want to do it yourself, but you don't want others also to do it. So basically nothing is happening. And so I decided that I really don't work with government organizations. I do everything on my own because that gives me satisfaction. I mean, if you try banging your head, waiting outside the office, they make you wait and then they'll have a meeting and then they'll talk big and then they'll send you out away. But nothing is going to happen. It's just a waste of time and it's very demotivating as well. And so that's a problem. That's a problem I'm facing. And the reason I'm talking about groundwaters is because 4 years ago, I did try. And what you're saying is right. When the water is really under the 20 feet or 15 feet under the ground, it is difficult to do groundwater. And here we have wetlands, but they're covering up the wetlands, changing the status of the wetlands, and then starting development on that. and that is causing more harm. And that is called, the builders and developers will sell their flats, and they are staying in places where the water will never touch them. It is the middle class and the low class who are going to suffer. And this is not only happening around, it's happening everywhere. And that is the problem. What you're saying about RA as well is they're filing FIRs for people who are just protesting. Even if you just stand there with the protester, they will take your name or they'll click pictures and they'll find an FIR on you, and then they'll harass you. So they're threatening, they're forcing you to not to do anything. You just sit down there and you pay your taxes. That's what they want.
Lisbon, what is happening? I was speaking to one Mr. Jaiprakash Narayan in Andhra, in Telangana, Hyderabad. And we are having, I asked the same questions you have asked just now. And he was telling me that today our democracy doesn't work the way it needs to function. There was a time when, whether it was in the parliament, whether it is in the legislative assembly, where people could voice out their concerns about if they don't agree with something that's not working in their locality, and ask for solutions. Today, it has become whatever the chief minister or the prime minister says, that is it. Whether the member of parliament likes it, doesn't like it, he has to vote for them. So our system of administration is changing. Most of the MLAs have no power. Most of the MPs have no power. It is only a namesake. So then when I asked, then how do we bring in change? When things are not working, how do we bring in change? He said, you need to do the study on where the change needs to happen. You need to get the laws and the policies changed to get it implemented. And the only person who can take the decision is either the chief minister, the prime minister, or the leader of the opposition. So what he's done is the areas that he's taken on. He's sacrificed his life and he picked up a few topics. And then he used to go to the leader of the opposition and say, hey, this is the problem. I want it addressed. Are you aligned? I think this policy should be implemented. Leader of the opposition would say yes. Then he would go to the main party, the main ruling party, and say, this is the policy that needs to be implemented. Are you okay with it? And then it used to get passed in the parliament and the necessary administrative system, because our entire democracy has fallen apart. The way it's functioning is not the way it needs to function. So this is a method that he followed. I'm just sharing this with you because I get your pain. I see what you see happening around you. And just like you're doing whatever is in your hands, I'm doing in Vishwa whatever is in my hand, that is creating awareness. Right. And I'm sharing with you how other people are dealing with such problems. Yeah. So we'll move on to the next question from Ms. Nina Kurkal. There are many villages still unknown. Then how can we help them? I would like to answer this. I want you to see a talk by Ms. Vanita on WishwaTalks. She's from Coimbatore and she's helped at least 300 lakes and tanks within villages, which have been dug up and restored. They were, even a 300-acre lake, I understand, which was barren without water. After she's restored that lake, it's now fully with water and birds, and the surrounding real estate had increased because of the effort she put in. And she's worked on more than 300 such lakes. She's also, I think, made aqua dams and all also. So I want you to see her video and see how an individual has made so much of an impact in villages. There's another question from Sukada Kulkarni, how to participate in water aid organizations to work about awareness about environment. You would like to answer that, Utkarsh?
I think same. I was telling that we work with community volunteers and all. So I think for any such thing that which relates to you under the umbrella of water, sanitation, and hygiene, and in the areas we are working, we would like to help you. In the areas we are not working, we would support with the technical capacity and the process and the approach how to work in your own community. So you can connect with me. I have Prashant and me, we have left the information with you in the chat box.
Okay. Question from Mr. Shrikant Mahatre. In coastal areas, it is difficult to recharge rainwater because of saline water available 10 feet below ground level. In that case, can we go for surface storage?
Yeah, definitely we can go for surface storage. But again, if we do it in a community level basis, then it would work more rather than at individual level. So you can create ponds and you can create those things. The other things in coastal setup, if there are certain open wells or dug wells, then I would also suggest that we start recharging that and diluting the already available saline intrusion. So we can dilute those. So either we can work on diluting the salinity, or we can create community water conservation structures that works in coastal.
Yeah, I am collecting the rainwater in a tank under my parking area, and I'm using it for gardening in the summers. Even in the summer, there'll at least be 2 rains, and I collect it and I use it. Another question from Ms. Nina Kurkul. What about the rainwater storage on the terrace? Is it collectible?
It is collectible. Another thing, rainwater is the purest form of water. And so just I think the first couple of rains which we get, which might have some sedimented particles or particulate matter from the air, which if you are near the industrial area can be acid rain also. So if you flush the first 2 rains, the other rains we receive in the monsoon are good enough for your domestic purposes apart from drinking. And I believe that if you do a little treatment also, household treatment, that is fine for drinking as well.
There is a statement made by Ms. Mansi Patel Badane that the design is available but not implemented well. For example, in a township in Igatpuri, Nasik, we have planned and worked with one-sided avenue trees and services of electrical, sewage, plumbing, etc. at the opposite side of the same road. Would you please feel free to share it with us so that we can share it across the country, Ms. Mansi? I don't know if you're still there online, but if you are, we request you to do that. There is a statement here by Mr. Satish Babu Gadde. This video clearly shows that the rainwater will be sent to 15 feet beneath the ground. It's only possible with cattle. Humans are not taking care of their future generation, but cattle are taking care. One from Ms. Nina Kurkal. We too enjoyed our life when we were small naturally, but yes, my children haven't enjoyed anything. Okay, Mr. Lisbon. I'm trying to create awareness of polluting our ponds. They're cutting down mangroves in this area, and there is plastic pollution everywhere. Here, most don't drink groundwater because it's all polluted. I can see your pain, Mr. Lisbon. I can see your picture. It's painful. It's horrible. What you're showing is horrible. We'll see. Let's collaborate and at least try to work towards bringing in awareness. Let Vishwa collaborate with you to bring in awareness. Ms. Nina Kurkal again. Are the roof gardens successful in India?
They are. So they are part of the water sensitive urban design we talk. So you capture the rain where it falls. So if it is falling on your terrace, and then roof gardens are very much successful in India.
I think we come to the end of our question and answer session. Thank you so much for being so patient and so diplomatically answering all my pointed questions. Thank you so much.
Sorry
Thank you to
No, I
all
think
the
that would not be diplomatic. That would be my limited experience in that direction, converging with government and all those things. So I work on the ground with the communities, but with government, I think what Mr. Lisbon was mentioning, that I have my apprehensions also working with government. And so even before WaterAid, I was working with private sector and all, but I always avoided working with government because it is a pain.
I'd like to request Mansi ma'am to come and ask your question if you're still there.
Yes, sir, I'm already here. I was just, that's not a
Add the
question.
spotlight,
Really,
please. Add a spotlight, please.
Sure.
unfortunately, my video is not working, so I'm audible. I'm only audible. So I just want to share it that the policies or whatever practices are going on. Unfortunately, the things are very small to be done, but I don't know why they are not being done. Even I am trying to figure it out since last 5-6 years. The time from when I've got myself aware about these things. So, and working out about the small things, like one example which I have mentioned already into the chat, that working with the trees and the services can be happen. By profession, I'm an architect, so I can figure it out with small certain details also. But when it comes with the government policies, whatever the stereotypes, what we can say, rules have been made, they're not ready to bifurcate with those things, and that creates a problem with everywhere and everything. Now my hometown is Dhule in Maharashtra, so it's not a big metro city, but even we are facing the problems over here. For example, I like to highlight one point over here. There's a Panzra river running from the city, in the heart of the city. Any river running from the town has its own meandering form, but the concretization from the civil department of the PWD department and whatever other the agencies, I don't want to be personally mentioned over it, but the concretization of this river banks, obviously it has to be created problems, and all the sewage sewage of the whole city is turning into the rivers again. So obviously it is going to harm your surface water as well as your groundwater also itself. And regarding the plantation, like we have more, I have recently completed my landscape architecture post-graduation also. We have learned out with certain techniques for grey water recharge treatments, which are not really so mechanical also, like plantation of certain plant pallets like banana tree or papaya trees and many other, few more trees. These root systems have their own peculiarity to pure the water, and then you can leave it into the mainstream. But the awareness and the stereotype, the things, I really don't know how to break it out, and I'm struggling.
You can also add moringa on those beds, that also cleanses the water a lot.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what I get from this webinar session in a way is that we as people are very much well aware about the problems around us. It's us trying to make the government more aware about the problems that we are facing. We are trying to make the government realize that you have a body like National Green Tribunal that you are not listening to. So what is the point of having such bodies if you're not going to listen to it? So these are the kind of things we have to push towards the government in a way, and make sure that they're at least listening to their own bodies dealing with these matters. Such bodies should be given more importance in the future. National Green Tribunal has been kind of failing with his exercises more and more in all the parts of the country, as the center is not listening to them at all and going. So I hope a lot more people join us in such initiatives and bring these topics to notice so that it cannot be avoided anymore and it has to be acted upon immediately. Any more questions from anyone? And
so how shall we tackle with such kind of issues then? So just do and let it do?
No, Mansi, remember I told you about how Dr. Jaiprakash Narayan has been working on this issue?
Okay.
We have a dysfunctional political system where no longer the ward members or the members in even the legislative assembly can voice their issues anymore in the assemblies or in the parliaments. You need to make policy, you need to make the law. Like you've written in the chat box where you said the trees went on one side, the other utilities went on the other side. Make that policy. Go and say, this is a design, I want it implemented. Go meet the chief secretary, go meet the irrigation secretary, go meet the urban development minister and say, I want this implemented. And that is the only way we can do it. because
Alright.
that is the way our system is.
Yes. Yes, we have to
And-
raise our voice.
You should
I
go
think
meet Dr. Prakash Narayan. Ask him for guidance. This is what I want to bring in change. This in my area, I want to bring in this change. How do you want me to? Because he's successful in actually implementing in the areas that he worked. So I would recommend when you talk to him, you will definitely get more guidance on how you can implement what you want to implement. And that is the only way, unless the citizens of our country take leadership and work towards what they believe in, I don't think our country is going to move forward without people like you.
Yeah.
Definitely, but the other thing is that instead we should maybe try creating the citizen groups, because obviously the voice of the masses are heard than an individual. So you can create certain citizen groups, and I have seen those working in Pune. So when you create certain citizen groups and then they go ahead and talk to certain officials and all that, I'm not saying 100% your things will work, but maybe 20% or 30% can work if there is a mass behind you, and not behind you, with you. I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I think we are done with the questions for now. And lastly, I'd like to ask everyone to remember to subscribe to WishwaTalks to get alerts on every new and exciting talk. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn for future updates. Kindly follow WaterAid India on Instagram and other social media platforms to stay updated with all the activities they bring in for stewardship opportunities and other kinds of programs. Also, kindly go through Lisbon Sir's profile once and follow up with his activities to see the hardcore groundwork that he's doing. And please, if you are in Bombay or Maharashtra and if you can help and support, go ahead with it. And thank you so much. Thank you for joining this session. I'll see you in the next session again.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Utkarsh sir, I request you to join the breakout room.
Sure.